If you've ever felt like you've said, I've messed up, I've slipped, it's over, all or nothing. I guess I can't do it. This is too hard for me. Other people can change their relationship with drinking, but I can't. I'm a loser, a failure. All the self-defeat talk that I know I've personally dealt with many times. And if that's you, if you've ever slipped up and really seen it as a setback, in fact, how many times have you tried to change your relationship with drinking only to find a slip became a slide? And what I mean by that is it was just, it could have been a blip in the screen. It could have been just a whoop, little had one, didn't mean to, didn't really want to. But so often we have this all or nothing thinking, and that pulls in the inner critic. And what we want to talk about in this workshop, in this video, is how to bring in the inner coach, which is so much more helpful, so much more supportive to your own personal growth and your journey. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So if you've ever said, I messed up again, what's wrong with me? This is for you. And today I want you to think about it. The voice that keeps you stuck versus the one that keeps you moving forward. We've got two voices in our heads. Which one are we going to listen to? So let's start with this. Let's start with the pattern. Let's start with the pattern that can be so relatable to all of us. And that is the slip. The infamous, I'm not going to drink tonight. And then you do drink that night, slip. Or you walk in a party and you thought you were prepared, but you really weren't. And somebody handed you a drink and you took it and you drank it. And then you thought, what am I doing? Right? We'll call it the slip. We'll call it, just in our Sober Sis community, a lot of times we call it data. We call it do a little recon. Then what happens is after we slip, the critic gets loud. Even the pointing in your own mind gets loud. Like, what? You said you weren't going to drink tonight and you did. So the critic gets loud and then the shame hits. Oh my gosh. That shame storm feels like a tsunami of like, defeat, shame, which, you know what that does, y'all? It actually increases our cravings because we want to quiet that voice. Not only if we've slipped are we feeling defeated, maybe bad, but then the shame storm comes, the inner critic's really loud, and that what we end up doing is craving anything, something to still the voice inside our heads, and that repeats the pattern. That's why so often a slip can become a slide, because it starts a new loop. And what I want to help you do today in this video is to help you get out of that defeating loop, which is through the voice of the inner critic, and be able to hear the voice of your inner coach. So this is a key thing to know. The critic does not protect you. It fuels the cycle. So often when we hear the voice of the inner critic, it sounds like it's there to help us. Like, like with other things, if we just deprive ourselves or, lots of willpower and push harder, maybe we'll get results. But no, not with something like changing your relationship with drinking, because we're going to talk about this throughout the workshop. It actually fuels a feeling of release and reprieve from the inner critic. So we've got to be able to distinguish which voice it is we're listening to, and that's going to be so important. So the inner critic doesn't protect you. It actually fuels the cycle. And what I want to help you do is get out of the cycle where a slip becomes a slide. How can you get back on board? How can you course correct? And that's where the inner coach comes in. So let's define the voices of the inner critic versus the inner coach. Okay, here's the inner critic. Let me know if this sounds anything like you've heard in your head before. Inner critic. Okay, here are some adjectives that would describe the inner critic. Harsh, absolute, shame-based, and fear-driven. This voice, the inner critic, has a lot of shoulda, woulda, coulda. I'm an Enneagram 1. If you know anything about the Enneagram, you know that 1s are known as perfectionists. It is really identifiable to me, this inner critic, because there's not a lot of compassion. It's not a kind voice. It's a pull up your bootstraps voice. It's a get a grip voice. It's a you can do better. You should do better. Why aren't you better? And it's a lot of self-imposed judgment, condemnation. I know oftentimes, you know, if you're a person of faith, or even if you're not and you can't name this feeling, it's almost like that of an accuser. And I think oftentimes the enemy of our souls, the enemy of our light, wants to come in as an accuser and uses our own voice, our own head to do it. And boy, that is not the voice you want to partner with to get any kind of life change or more light in your life at all. I know I've seen that in my own life as I've partnered with God to shed light on the accuser and the inner critic and the harsh judgment, because that did not get me anywhere I wanted to go. So now let's contrast that with the inner coach, okay? You can do this with yourself, and that's what's so awesome, because everywhere you go, there you are. So what if the voice inside your head became an ally, a friend, a voice that was helping you, not hurting you or undermining your resilience? So the inner coach, firm but kind. Okay, so when I say firm, I mean, it's not like, oh yeah, do whatever, you know, make promises to yourself and break them because you don't matter. No, you can be firm, you can be solid with yourself, all while being kind and respectful. I want you to think about this. How would you talk to somebody else? Can you be firm with your boundaries? Can you ask for what you need in kindness, love, and respect? Absolutely. Hopefully you do it every day. Talk that way to yourself. That's how an inner coach would talk. An inner coach would say, hey, we had a boundary there. You crossed it. And guess what? It's okay. It is not a setback. It's instead really, really valuable feedback. Forget the mistake, Jen. Forget the mistake. Insert your name. Forget the mistake, but remember the lesson. So don't waste it and go on. Go on. You don't have to make a slip, turn it into a slide. Another thing is the inner coach is truth-based. So often the inner critic, like I mentioned, was fear-based, is all about just kind of whispering lies about your identity and your worth and your value. And you know what? You can reject that. You don't have to believe that. You don't have to pick that up and put it inside. You can look at that and go, you know what? That's not the truth. I know the truth about who I am. And I know that I'm maybe doing better today than I was yesterday, and I'm not where I want to be. And a truth-based inner coach is going to remind you of your true identity, that your worth and your value is not based on your performance. Hear me in the back. Your value and your worth is not based on your performance, but rather your presence. So how great is that, that you don't have to work on performing all the time, that you can work on your presence? It's been a game changer for me, big time, big time. Another thing about the inner coach is it's data or data, tomato, data focused. Okay, it just looks at, it's looking at the facts, you know, like, okay, if you got into a scenario where maybe you didn't pre-decide before you went, you can then go, okay, as an inner coach, you can tell yourself, you know what? You thought you could decide when you got there. We got to go back to the 3 Ps, pre-decide, pre-plan, and play the movie forward. So guess what? You can go back and go, well, where did it kind of go off the rails? Did I not pre-decide before I got there? Did I not have a plan when I got there? And did I not know how to play the movie forward? And listen, if you're listening to me right now and you're like, whoa, where are these 3 Ps coming from? Where are these tools? Well, first off, they're in my free guide, because I want to help you navigate and surf the urge at wine o'clock tonight, as well as things that we talk about in my 21-day reset challenge, which starts on the 1st of every month. So that's so important to know. So an inner coach is going to be kind of data focused, like an observer. Have you heard that before? I think it's awesome that God made us where we're just not like an animal where we're like, we don't know why we're doing what we're doing. We have the ability, God-given ability, to use our imagination and even our visualization to step outside of our own experience and observe. Y'all, the observer is so important because the observer is not a judger. Observing is not judging. It's just noticing the facts or the details so that you can use those to course correct. It's a great thing. It's a great thing to be able to see in reality land, what is clear. And that's how you're going to also know what's true versus what is untrue, a lie, or fear-based. And then last but not least, the inner coach is growth oriented. The inner critic is going to stunt your growth because it's going to come down so hard on you that oftentimes for me, I would just double down on the mistake I made. I was like, well, I already blew it. Oh, well. Oh, well, I thought I could do a weekend or a month or whatever my goal was, or even an event. And if I blew it, even that terminology, blew it, it sounded so big, like I didn't know how I could recover versus, oh, it's feedback. It's feedback. So your inner coach is going to have a level of growth. Like, how can we take that experience and use it next time? Again, don't waste anything on this journey. Every time you struggle, every time you feel like you're failing, reframe that, because that failure or that slip is actually such valuable feedback. It's getting you closer to where you want to go because you just got the feedback again that it wasn't what you wanted. And over time, you can literally rewire your brain to have a whole nother thought when a slip or rerouting needs to happen. It's so awesome because then you can get off that. It's almost like a balance beam or like a tightrope of perfectionism, and it's wobbly versus going, like if you look at a really strong tree with really deep roots, it can sway with the wind and the storms. That's that inner coach that's like, you know what? It's just a little windy right now. It's a little blustery out there. But hang on tight, stay anchored in the truth, and don't believe the lies of the accuser. And don't team up with the inner critic that bombards you with performance. Instead, work on presence. How can I be more present? And even use the slip up, even use the quote setback as that valuable feedback. So I would say here, a coach speaks to your potential. A critic speaks to your failures. Which one do you want to listen to? The critic or the coach? Which one? The one that's speaking to your potential or the one that's speaking to your failure? Are you looking backwards or are you looking forwards? So let's talk about this. The dreaded shame spiral. So this is kind of how it goes. This is kind of the loop. First, you have a trigger. Some would call it a cue or a trigger or something like maybe it's at the end of a long day, you use a drink to transition. Maybe you have social anxiety, and that's what you do when you get to a happy hour is you walk in and you think, I need a drink to connect. I need a drink to be able to do this. So that in turn creates a craving because now you've given value to what the trigger is telling you to have. It's actually kind of a false placement. It's like not true, but it feels true in the moment. That's why we've got to counteract it with truth-based inner coaching, right? But what happens is the trigger happens, then the craving, then the drink, right? This is what happens in the shame cycle. Well, after the drink comes what? Oh man, I can't believe I drank again, or I wasn't going to drink tonight, or oh, I had one too many. And then the shame can set in. And then before you know it, the self-attack. How many of you listening to me have ever had a self-attack at 3 a.m. in the morning when you're laying there in the pitch dark black of night and you wake up because your heart is beating a little faster? That's because of the dynorphin going on in your body to bring you down into homeostasis. There's a scientific reason for that. That heart racing, that 3 a.m. wake up call, the dry mouth, the dread, the self-attack. That's what used to happen to me in the shame cycle. Was I would sure enough have a trigger. Sure enough, often I would drink until I knew the tools that I can't wait to teach you. I would drink, and then that would cause more of the shame and then the self-attack. And the self-attack, actually, it ultimately created more craving. Because when you have the voice of the critic really loud in your ear, in your mind, or you have a sense of anxiety about drinking or failure or isolation and feeling alone, guess what? That'll make you want to drink more, not less. Those are all negative emotions. That's a negative state of being. And so, unless you've got the tools to transition yourself out of critic into coach, it's just going to be so easy to throw a drink at it. And you know what the drink does? Is it quiets the inner critic temporarily. Keyword, temporarily. Oh, the inner critic's going to come back with a vengeance once it comes to. But that drink can knock it out, right? Picture it like, TKO, it gets knocked out. So you're like, oh, I feel better now. Oh no, the inner critic it's laying down, but it's going to get back up. But instead, when you can transition from the inner critic to the inner coach can stand with you. You can actually stand with you. I talk about this in my 21-day reset challenge that starts at the beginning of every month. One of my key messages in there is the importance of being able to belong to yourself. And that is when I bring it back to that 3 a.m. wake up call. There you are laying in bed after one too many, which could have been one at all. And you're laying there and the shame cycle is starting. That's when the inner coach would be so helpful, because the inner critic's just going to berate you. You're going to wake up with good intentions. You're going to try not to do it again, but the craving's going to be even stronger because there's even more of a level of eject out of all this emotional, mental chaos. But the inner coach can say, you know what? Take notes. Don't judge yourself. Observe yourself. How do you feel right now? Is this how you want to feel again? No. Guess what? You're learning. It's like learning mode instead of performance mode. And then you can begin to course correct. But if you go back to the voice of the inner critic, it's actually going to fuel and feed the cycle of drinking, because it's going to increase your craving for wanting to numb out. And what I was going to say is, we can't selectively numb. We cannot. Famous Brene Brown coach. Quote, we cannot selectively numb. So if you're numbing the inner critic, if you're numbing the nagging voice inside that says, loser, you failed again, you're also numbing the inner coach. You're numbing the resilience that you really do have inside to face the giant, which is drinking, and to face the slip up, which is really it's just a pebble. And we make it a rock, we make it a boulder, and then we just let it snowball. And then it's really hard to get out from under. So the shame cycle or spiral is really fueled by the inner critic. And it's the inner coach that can focus on your potential and your learning and not your performance. So again, when we numb both. We numb the critic and the coach. But when you stay present, not judging, but observing as the inner coach, then you're actually able to course correct the next day and utilize that feedback so that nothing's wasted. I mean, how awesome is that? No hangover wasted. Wouldn't that be great? Instead of piling them up and feeling worse and worse about yourself. Here are some common scripts. Let me mention these real quick. Common scripts. And these are common scripts of the inner critic for sure. You always do this. You have no discipline. Look, you ruined it. Everyone else can do this but you. Why can't you get it together? I mean, I can almost hear the voice because I am familiar with it, even though I have quieted and silenced that voice by recognizing it, bringing it into awareness. I'm not unaware of my inner critic. Oh, I'm very aware of her. And I just say, thank you. We've got it. Thank you. The coach in me has it, because the coach in me is going to be able to pull up instead of crash and burn. We're going to be able to turn this thing around. I want to right now give you some practical tools so that you can literally rewrite with coaching language and maybe swap some of these examples. For example, the inner critic says, I blew it. I blew it. It's over. Whatever. Wheels off. I'm just gonna go on a drinking frenzy for the next 3 weeks and then just try again next month. Whatever. I blew it. What if we changed it to that was a moment? That was a moment. Instead of that is my whole life and that is me. What if it was a moment? And what if you could then go back to kind of reverse engineering? What happened? Again, this is not a moral failure. Drinking is an addictive substance that actually creates a thirst for itself. Drinking wants you to have more of it. If you can course correct and be able to reverse engineer and go, you know what? What happened there? What was that? Oh, my blood sugar was low at 3 o'clock and I was in the grocery store and it started to sound good to have a drink tonight, even though at 10 a.m. I said, no way. If you can reverse engineer it and figure out, then you can apply that. That's what a coach would do. That's what I would do. That's what I would do if I was working with you. And you can do that often with yourself. We want to come alongside you in our community so that you don't have to do it alone. But when you've got that voice in your head, you can literally retrain it to be more like an inner coach and go, you know what? Let's put our heads together here. What happened? And then you can course correct. Awesome. Another one is I have no control. I have no control. Like, have you ever felt that way with drinking where you're like, I don't know what happens. I just hand over the keys of my mind to this beverage and it is off to the races. And what if you told yourself as the inner coach, you know what? I'm learning new patterns. It's going to take time. I'm going to have to practice a new pattern, a new way of being, not even always a new way of doing. Sometimes it's a new way of being. You do have control over that. I have control. You have control. We have choices. We have agency. We have self-sovereignty where we can choose what we think and what we put in our bodies. That's a big deal. Another common phrase of the inner critic. I will never change. It won't change. It is what it is. I just need to get better at dealing with it. I'll never change. And what if you said instead, change takes time? I'm telling you what, ladies, doing what I do and being a normal, almost 55-year-old wife, mother, even though my kids are grown and flown, there are many days for me to get on here and do what I'm doing. I don't feel it. I don't always feel confident. I don't always, if I look easy breezy, cover girl, I don't mean to ever come across that way, but I have to talk to myself constantly about our best being good enough, and showing up authentically and genuinely is better than polished and focused on performance. Because I can guarantee you, if you're watching this video, you don't really care if I'm a high performing video maker, video speaker. What you really care about is, do I know what in the world I'm talking about? Because I've lived it, because this is an experience I've had after working with tens of thousands of women. I've learned that I'm not alone, because we actually all feel very similar. And that is, maybe somebody else can do this, but I can't do it. No, you can do it. Because I thought the same thing. I thought I can never really imagine my life without alcohol or devaluing it to the point that I didn't want it. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to not want it. How about that? I wanted to not want it. And I'm telling you what, my inner critic was like, you'll always want it. You'll just never get to have it. And you're going to be miserable. Well, who wants to sign up for that? But instead, my inner coach said, you know what? It's going to be temporarily uncomfortable. It's going to be long-term gain. Go with the discomfort in the moment for the long-term gain versus the short-term. I wouldn't even call it a gain. It's just a numbing. And then the long-term diversion from what you really want. One more thing, rebuilding self-trust. Oh my goodness, this is such a huge topic for women I work with who felt like in their drinking years, there was just a level of self-abandonment going on. What? Yeah, that's a big word. Self-abandonment. What does that even mean? And I think it's so often when we just let the inner critic take us for a ride, and now we're at the mercy of this fear-based, accusing, you'll never do it, you can't do it, you just don't have what it takes, just you're a loser mentality. And I think when we do that, we miss so much of what we have inside that says, oh no, we can do this. It's just, we've got to look at it the right way. So how to rebuild self-trust? Well, first off is let's start small. I'm a big fan of creating like an effort ladder, where it's like, think about a ladder. If you were to want to climb a ladder, you wouldn't be at the base of the ladder or on the ground and then skip 10 rungs and just be at the top of the ladder. We would never do that in real life. You know, I love analogies. So with the effort ladder, it's one rung at a time. So what can your first rung be of keeping a promise to yourself? For me, one of my very first promises was, I'm going to take my makeup off at night. Now, if we're a pretty habitual drinker, someone like myself who was using alcohol even towards the end of the evening as a sleep aid, which day 4 in the 21-day reset, we talk about how alcohol impacts your sleep, and it does not help you sleep. It'll knock you out, but it will not give you restorative sleep. Anyway, that was one of the very first promises. I thought, well, okay, or commitments, I should say, that I can make to myself that I can keep. I can do that. Well, now it's become a pattern. It's become a routine, and something I still celebrate. You can ask my Quest sisters. Something I still celebrate every night, that I can take off my makeup and do like my skincare routine. Or maybe for you, it's drinking more water. You know, it's just flat out like, don't focus on that you're never going to drink again. Focus on how much water you can drink today. I'm talking about rungs. I'm talking about effort ladder. I'm talking about creating small wins, because your critic is looking for big wins or nothing, right? The inner critic is very harsh, all or nothing thinking. Either you're good, you're bad, you're right, you're wrong. It's very binary. It's very all or nothing. Whereas a coach is like, hey, relax. We're all practicing here. We're all learning. We're all doing our best. So let's create a win. Let's create a small win. And just the consistency of that starts to rebuild trust, because you're like, I said I was going to do it, and I did it. If you can do that in the small things, I guarantee you can do it in the medium to big things if you practice with the small things first. So that's what I would say. And just those micro wins. So when you have a lot of micro or mini wins, you know what they do? They pile up and they create a big win, one by one. So instead of going for one big win, like I'm never drinking again, or I'm going to sign up for Jenn's program and do it perfectly, instead go, you know what? I'm going to try that, and I'm going to commit to it. And if I make a mistake, I've already got a commitment now to be a coach, not a critic in my own mind. So this is all the stuff we're talking about in the 21-day reset challenge. This is just a flavor. This is just a tidbit of what we're talking about every day, because I think if you're going to work with your inner coach, you still need an outer coach that can give you the structure and the roadmap in which you're driving on. And that's what I offer you in the 21-day reset challenge. It's a road I've traveled. It's a road that many women have traveled, and we invite you to travel on it too. We've already got the roadmap. We know the best rest stops. we know what works, because so many women have done the 21-day reset challenge, not focused on perfection or performance, but rather progress and presence. If you focus on the right thing, then you will reach that goal. Because my hope for you taking the 21-day reset, it's just that you'll never even look at alcohol the same. Not that you'll quit forever or that you checked every box. Listen, all this stuff takes time. And that's what the inner coach can do. And that's what I can do as your coach, is give you time to practice with lots of support that's still data-based, that's still truth-based, that's still firm but kind, because you want that parameter. You want to give yourself guardrails, so it's not a free-for-all. So I invite you to check it out. If you have not done a 21-day reset challenge, the next one starts on the 1st of the month. You work on being your inner coach, and I would love to be your outer coach. The voice in your head. Some of the women I work with literally have said, Jenn, I can hear you in my head when I'm at the party, or when I'm in my kitchen, or when I'm in the grocery store and I'm like going through the alcohol aisle. You can hear me in your head. Let me support you. Let me cheer you on. But at the end of the day, it really is going to be up to you. This is your choice. You have the power. That's what's so great about the freedom of alcohol-free living, is you always have the choice, and the choice comes from having an inner coach. That's the one I'm going to work on. So thanks again for being here. Bye, everybody.